So let's hang out with Dad and Scott and talk about the Federal Reserve for a second. Now remember, they talk about this stuff. Meanwhile, what's going on in the backdrop? Okay, we have the tariffs going in. We have the resumption of deals throughout all of that. Okay, he's nearshoring manufacturing. So he hit Latin America and South America way less than he hit over in Asia. And everybody got a uniform tariff anyway, and all the deals are going to be starting to get made, about, where we're going to do this, that, and, the AI and the robotics are going to create more manufacturing here in the United States because we're trying to rebalance trade and have our trade deficit, worked out. Meanwhile, we have this debt that we need to roll over, and the Federal Reserve is not doing what Trump says by dropping interest rates in order to, save money on this debt that we need to roll. So we have the conflict brewing between them. We have the pending audit of Fort Knox. All the gold flew back to see if we actually even have the fucking gold there in the fucking first place. Then, we have Doge going in, trying to cut out all the stuff and update the computer systems. Trump did that executive order about updating the payment systems. But remember, it's the Federal Reserve that does the payments. It's not Scott Bessent at the Treasury. And we have the Stable and Genius Acts, just ready to be passed here very soon. What we know about RLUSD? RLUSD has Ondo having to help back it with tokenized treasuries in order to collateralize it to create more transactions because there's more RLUSD that can be in circulation. That's how you create a fully trusted system, all using XRP as the neutral bridge asset between whatever else is in that gumball machine. So now we're coming up to this point where you have to remember Scott Bessent, he's also a cheerleader for the federal government, all right? So in order to sell a bond salesman, like he said earlier in this interview. So he has to, cheerlead a little bit for the federal government and especially for the dollar. Remember, dollar is only what's considered legal tender at the time. Right now Federal Reserve Notes has it. And let's take a listen.
Can I ask you a weird question? Who runs the Federal Reserve exactly? I don't really. How can you have this pivotal institution that obviously has the most direct effect on markets of any, and it does seem outside of political control. What is that?
Well, look, I think that during my confirmation hearing, and I was actually at a dinner that Jerome Powell was at last night. At my confirmation hearing, I said, I'm only going to talk about the mistakes the Federal Reserve has made in the past. I won't talk about the ones they're going to make in the future, right? But I think it is important for monetary policy that they are walled off, that some of the other things they do, regulation, they got into DEI, they got into climate. I actually think that impinges on their monetary policy and makes them vulnerable. So I think that they should focus on monetary policy, doing the best that they can for the American economy, the American people, keeping inflation.
They have failed. They have failed for over 120 years, okay? Ever since 1913, the value of our dollar has gone down, and what sprang up in existence to keep this system going? It's the CIA, it's the NSA, it's all these other things that keep the coup going so we can, keep the trade lanes on, so we can keep those governments all corrupt, taking the U.S. dollars, taking the Federal Reserve note. Meanwhile, all of our manufacturing got stripped because of all these trade deals that were worked out in order for us to be the financial capital of the world. And we have $36 trillion worth of debt because we have this central bank, this lender of last resort, which it never is. It's always the lender of first resort because, the government goes into deficit by $2 trillion a year. Where do they come up with the shortfall? They fucking print it. Meanwhile, we all suffer.
Low.
Not to mention the fact that they also engage in debanking of conservatives for, reputational risk. It doesn't matter what you think about the NWO. We're already underneath it. Only if you're political does it matter. Only if you're political, because you're already tracked. You're already tracked on everything. So, we have the Genius stablecoin bills ready to go. We have a whole new financial system ready to go. And we see the conflict beginning between Trump and the Fed. and it has all to do with this debt. Because remember, it's all based on fraud. It's all based on fraud, and we're paying interest on it. So why the fuck are we paying it? And why aren't we getting refunds? Remember, he's a bond salesman at the end of the day, and they need. So just listen through that lens.
And then the rest, there are a lot of other banking agencies too.
So the Fed controls the weather now too? What were they doing with climate?
Well, I will tell you, there's something, the Treasury Secretary chairs something called the Financial Stability Oversight Council, and it's all the financial regulators. And I think it was 2 weeks before Silicon Valley Bank went under, FSOC issued a report, and guess what they said the biggest risk to the financial system was? Climate.
Really?
Not that there was a large bank in California that was having a slow motion run on its assets, and that it would cause another bank failure, then another bank failure. It was climate.
And you know what's hilarious about that? They got paid out 100 cents on the dollar by the FDIC. It wasn't no, 250 grand, make me fucking holler bullshit. No. All of those people got bailed out. Oh, they're millionaires, billionaires, whatever. Like, that were holding money in that bank. Oprah, a whole bunch of other people. It's freaking nuts. A bunch of celebrities and shit. You think they're gonna do that for us? Do they got the money in the first place? They blew it on that shit. Oh, wait, they printed. I forgot.
So, as far as I can see, climate's been pretty good. They failed. The regulators failed. And I think that's what people are getting sick of.
Seems to be a lot of that going around, buddy.
And it's back to one of my favorite phrases that President Trump uses, common sense.
Yes.
Look, it's just common sense that if you have a whole bunch of deposits that could leave your bank with a click, you shouldn't have all these long-term assets, but they were too busy worrying about the weather. And there was also some degree of regulatory capture. Seems hard to believe to the average citizen. The CEO of Silicon Valley Bank.
Oh, they're corrupt? Are you kidding? What about the Federal Reserve? They're corrupt as fuck. They hand out all these easy fucking loans to all their friends and shit, man. And the only people... there's no vote on the interest rate. So it is taxation without representation. Get it? This thing's gotta go. And we got a replacement. We can do, the unit of account with RLUSD, the method of payment with XRPL, and the means of exchange with XRP. We don't need the fucking Fed anymore, fella.
Was on the board of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, who was his chief regulator. They're going to tell that guy what to do?
Why is gold moving around the world in such huge quantities right now?
Well, a couple of things. It's moving. Physically, it's moving because of potential tariffs here. So, it was unclear whether we were going to exempt gold from tariffs, which I believe we have. So there was a big move out of vaults in Switzerland, out of vaults in London to get it into New York. And look, that there are a lot of different stores of value over time.
Please, tokenization.
Bitcoin's becoming a store of value. Gold has historically been.
Who's Satoshi? Where are the backs? If it's a store of value, why does it have this single point of failure from an unknown source containing a massive amount that can crash the value if even one transaction occurs out of that fucking wallet? So it's not a store of value. And plus it needs to be accepted by other people around the world for it to be a store of value. Not only cross-border, but cross-culturally. Okay?
A store of value. I think what's interesting is where do we see the gold demand coming from? A huge amount is from China.
Yes.
Where, as I said, they're in the middle of an economic recession/depression. People don't trust the Chinese currency because they have capital controls. There are 1.1 1.4 billion Chinese who all want to get their money out, and they won't let them. They will let them buy gold.
They don't trust the Chinese, and they don't trust us because we kicked Russia out of the SWIFT system, and we seized $300 billion worth of their foreign reserves. We need a whole new system. Nobody can be in charge of it because everyone's fucking corrupt. There's always power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely every single time. So we need a decentralized reserve. This is where this is all going.
So that's the response you think. But it's just, do you find it interesting that even now, 2025, when everything is abstract and digital, that gold is still widely believed globally to be a reliable store of value?
I think that
It's going to be even more so when you can trade the digital token that's actually tokenized for it with like a QR stamp or something right into the gold bar. Because right now, with all this gold flying back, the gold that was supposed to be in Fort Knox, it was all serial numbered. So if they loaned it out, remelted it down, now they're trying to get it back, I wonder if those serial numbers are going to match. Doubtful.
gold has a lot of history going with it.
Yeah.
That a friend of mine's grandmother during Russia had a financial crisis in '98. Then they had a big inflation, and a friend of mine's grandmother went out and bought 18 bicycles and put them in her apartment, and that was her store of value.
Yes.
So
how'd she do on the bike investment?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I wish I did that well. But that, look, gold also has other applications, a lot of applications, jewelry,
manufacturing,
in India,
electrical.
but it's something that historically people have all agreed on. And gold can't have a fiscal problem. Gold cannot have a gigantic budget deficit.
Can't have a Satoshi problem.
Gold cannot have
a Michael Saylor problem. A MicroStrategy problem.
A war. So
a transaction problem.
Just the fact that
when it's tokenized,
it is this isolated thing makes it very interesting. And the fact that the entire global trading system until Richard Nixon took us off was tied to gold.
So you're not anti-gold?
Oh, no. When I had my fund, I think people might have called me a gold bug.